Now, Ford is really a standout pick these days. They're able to come up with really interesting vehicles that hold people's attention, have a lot of character to me. And the Ford Bronco really exemplifies that. So, this is a vehicle that they're saying starts at $34,000. Realistically, it's going to cost you somewhere like 50 grand for the one that you want. And a lot of these are four bangers, right? These are four-cylinder vehicles often if you want the manual transmission, which is a great option to have. And then, you get up there with some of this other stuff, six-cylinder, Raptor, whatever. But realistically, it's a very interesting off-road four-wheel drive vehicle, a real four-wheel drive vehicle, in the neighborhood of a Jeep Wrangler. Um, and it has a lot of character. And we're seeing that a lot with Ford, right? People who buy F-150s, Bronco, these are people that really appreciate what Ford represents. And I think that's cool. I think it's cool that they're encouraging enthusiasts, people who actually really like what a four-wheel drive vehicle is. Um, and I wonder. So they dropped the Focus RS and they want to focus on trucks, and I get that. But this is another great example of how Ford is able to make a really interesting vehicle that holds people's attention, and I like that. This is a super fast, hot hatch, and these days you're still able to get these things for like $30,000. I mean, they're holding their value. But again, so Ford is able to take these four-cylinder vehicles. I mean, they're probably manufacturing these things for $5,000 or $10,000 and really, get a lot of value out of them. Um, Same thing with the Lightning, right? This is a super cool vehicle. And you know what I like about the Lightning is they really stuck with what an F-150 represents. They didn't get too creative with it. And it seems to be the case that oftentimes these guys are getting too creative with their electric vehicle designs. And I'm not sure what to make of that because I like when they take a vehicle that people really appreciate for what it is and they just make it electric, you know? And that's excellent. And, as far as I know, this thing really you're able to get for $60,000, $70,000 for a great electric vehicle, 0 to 60 in 4 seconds. Isn't that wild where we're at? Full size, real workhorse pickup truck with a 0 to 60 of 4 seconds. And to me, that's something else. And you look at this interior, and this is a vehicle that's really going to stand out to somebody that appreciates what an F 150 is. So we go and we've got Subaru. And I love Subaru. And again, Subaru is a company that people appreciate for Kaizen. It's a Japanese term that essentially means incremental improvement. And when you sit in any Subaru from the past 10, 15, even 20 years, these vehicles don't really change much. I mean, the overall driving feel, the steering, transmission, a lot of these vehicles feel very similar. And even if you're in the Crosstrek small SUV, which is really just an Impreza souped up, or Forester, they're all very, very nice vehicles that sit on top of the very essential Subaru all-wheel drive platform. And what that means is you're getting fluid coupled all-wheel drive, as opposed to electronic, braking, whatever all-wheel drive that you see in more luxury vehicles. And you just get a vehicle that people who, live up here in the mountains really love, and they hold their value really well. And overall, they're just very nice, fun, sporty sedans for the money. And for some reason, that's hard to find these days. I don't know why. Everybody's going off and doing different things and kind of losing track of really just making awesome, fun sedans. And I think a lot of people do want that. You're seeing this trend with small SUVs, crossovers. They're really trying to strike a balance for something that somebody's realistically going to buy to enjoy with their family, but also to be a lot of fun to drive. And to me, that's what the WRX always has represented, much in the same way of like an M3 even, which I think is super cool. Now, the Corvette really is the classic example of an excellent value for a super fast car. And I love that. I mean, this is a car that really just blows a lot of other coupes out of the water. I mean, this thing's competitive with Porsches, with all this other stuff, and you're really able to get one for like 70 grand. You have to like the style, of course. You have to be interested in that really low, speedy, crazy look to it, even in the inside. I mean, this is very racy, wild stuff. Not everybody understands this control thing in the middle, but it's something they came up with. But just in general, man, for ever since I've been interested in cars, even as a kid, like the Corvette was just always the vehicle that represented, man, this is an American muscle extreme sports car that isn't a boat. When you think of American muscle, a lot of these things are just boats, but this is really something that goes head to head with a lot of these other coupes for a really, really good value. And still to this day, that's the way I feel about these Corvettes. So now they're mid-engine, which is cool. Weight distribution, whatever. I'm sure they've really engineered this thing, to the nines these days. And that's generally what you're seeing these days. I mean, you're seeing a lot of American companies that used to just go for as much power as possible, not concerned about weight, not concerned about fuel economy. Whereas these days, you're really seeing them take engineering seriously. And that's the way I feel about even like the Focus RS that we were looking at before, is they're trying to squeeze a lot of power and a lot of dynamics out of these vehicles, which I love. So definitely a good pick for a sports car. You got the Chevy Bolt EV. Now, how about this? Now, this is a real value for an electric vehicle. And, it's a pretty nice way to go, honestly. If you want the best deal to get a fully electric vehicle, you've got the Chevy Bolt EV at 26 grand. How about that? So this thing is pretty similar in size to like Mini, all this other type of thing, and it's pretty good quality. I mean, you notice like backup camera and stuff inside of this thing kind of cuts corners in terms of, but that's what you have to expect when you're looking for really a good deal for an electric vehicle. Pretty quick, pretty fun. I mean, 0 to 60 in 6.5 seconds, plenty. I think this is a pretty nice deal. And it's good to see that Chevrolet is exploring with an open mind what electric is going to mean for them. And, we see other companies doing all this interesting stuff with performance hybrids. And I suspect we're going to be seeing that with Corvette and all this other stuff. Other than that, I don't really know what they're going for with the designs and stuff. To me, a lot of this stuff kind of looks unusual, but it is what it is. Now, Mercedes to me is by far always the best quality vehicle at every price point. And that means something different these days because Mercedes really is inching towards kind of the $30,000 price range these days for a lot of these vehicles. You go look at the A Class, GLA, and the GLB is very cool now too. Really, they are able to deliver a very high quality vehicle in the $30,000 price range. This is the upcoming C63 hybrid, which is cool. Okay, so they're doing hybrid in a lot of their vehicles now as a way to get more performance out of it. And this is going to be an AMG C class hybrid. And I really like the look of this one particularly. Some of their other vehicles, I feel like there could be a little bit more detail in the grille, a little more that differentiates them. And really, I don't know what to think about this electric shaver look that you're seeing in a lot of these sportier vehicles. To me, it's a little too out of control. This, I love the detail in the bumper. There's a certain depth to the way the front end of this particular one is designed that I love. And you kind of have the flares and the details in the hood. But just generally speaking, if you appreciate this very Art Deco Mercedes, almost even aeronautical design, it really is the best quality for a vehicle. Always has been in terms of interior, leather, in terms of panel gap on the exterior, very, very tight fitting. And something I've always noticed with Mercedes is even when you get into their SUVs, for some reason, you get in a Mercedes all-wheel drive SUV, like the GLE, which is the new ML. These vehicles handle like much smaller vehicles. You're in the rain or whatever, you're doing tight turns. Something about the way they have these things tuned that they really feel almost like you're in a hot hatch. And I love that. Like they've really done it well. Um, Not sure what to make of the new electric design language. Um, so this is kind of interesting, this light bar across the back. Very Art Deco, light, flowy interior. You got to appreciate that. But you go look at these things, and I'm not sure about the soap bar look. And we're seeing this a lot, okay? Um, a lot of electric cars, they're focusing on aerodynamics. They really want to emphasize, from a brand standpoint, where they're headed in terms of, sustainable energy, all this. But they just kind of look unusual to me. They're less relatable to me, and really, personally, I feel like if I was going to go buy an expensive luxury vehicle, I'd want something that feels more relatable. Um, and This just ain't it for me. But, I think that we'll see kind of an ebb and flow. And, I'm sure they're going to release different vehicles in varying degrees. Like the EQB to me is a little bit more normal looking. Still kind of has that plasticky, TV grill on the front, but that's electric. Now, Mini to me is what still represents BMW. Uh, I find BMW these days very unrelatable, which is a shame because I love BMW and I love the E30. And to this day, the Mini is the only one that still represents what that means to me. I love the way Mini feels to drive. And especially something that I'm noticing is quality is really, really there these days for Mini. It didn't always used to be. Mini used to have a little bit of a Little Tikes feel to it in terms of the interior, the plastics, the way everything fit, really crunchy. These days, Mini interior is top notch, absolute quality, on the level of Mercedes. And the exterior details, I love the way that they accentuate kind of the depth of the bumper details and the lights. All of that is stuff that I really pay attention to and I love. Uh, that's just attention to detail that makes a difference. Uh, and I love clever LED lighting and stuff. I don't know what I think about the Union Jack on the tail lights. It's whatever. But just in general, these vehicles have such nice quality, such fun to drive, so much character, and you really always get the feeling that these are enthusiast cars that are designed for people who love Mini, who love BMW, and just attention to detail all over. And I think that's great. They've always been known for being super customizable in terms of cosmetics, right? I mean, you buy one of these, you have so many. They always said thousands and thousands of options for configurability in terms of how it looks. Uh, Very standard four-cylinder supercharged vehicle, but super fun, and they really stand out. Every one of them is just a characteristic Mini feel that if you appreciate it, you really do love it. Aftermarket, you can find these on a pretty good deal sometimes, which I like. And that's something that I always encourage people to think about. You always go and you say to yourself, oh, Honda, Toyota, whatever, is a really good deal. Subaru is going to be a great deal, really reliable. Realistically, a lot of those cars hold their value so well that you almost find yourself feeling like you'd be better off getting something that people don't typically think of as a good deal and enjoying it. And a lot of cars are reliable these days. That's the thing. Like everybody always used to think, oh, you have to get a Honda to get a reliable vehicle. Everybody's getting reliability figured out. All cars are getting super, super reliable. I love Mini, and I've always had a good time with them. Always had pretty reliable experience. Same goes for Volkswagen. This is another example where you go find Volkswagen aftermarket. A lot of the times they're a really good deal. And that's just because it's not what people immediately think of when you go get a aftermarket vehicle that you want to be a good deal. You don't immediately think of Volkswagen because you start getting in your head, oh God, I'm going to get a Volkswagen and this is, in line with Audi, aftermarket parts, everything's in it. But, I like these cars. And I always thought that the Golf Alltrack is an interesting vehicle, and I don't know where this thing went. So this is a wagon all-wheel drive, and they discontinued it. And that could just be because Americans don't like wagons. But you're getting, Audi all-wheel drive in a Volkswagen for something to the tune of like $20,000 aftermarket, which I think is really excellent. And if you appreciate Volkswagen styling, which I do, I think it's a cool car. I think it has a little bit of lift to it over the standard Golf. But just in general, if you like Volkswagen styling, I always think that the GTI is such an awesome vehicle. Super fun, really, really tight to drive, which I love. I love the transmission on this car. The manual transmission is just so tight, and the way it just snaps right into gear. Like, that's the best way to describe it. Like, you almost could just use one finger to pop it into each gear. And the quality on the interior has always been really good on these vehicles. The panels fit tight. The electronics are always great. The infotainment works well, which I appreciate. And yeah, I mean, they're just cool vehicles. And so we're seeing that with the ID.4 too. This is their new electric SUV. 38 grand, pretty good, it's all right. Vehicles are kind of expensive these days in general. It's just a sign of the times in the economy, I suppose. But just interesting design, very cool, tight panel fit, And if you appreciate the way that these vehicles look, I think they're a great pick as just good all-around vehicles. And you're getting a company who, again, this is Volkswagen, Audi, Porsche engineering, which, to you that might mean that it's more expensive to repair, or maybe it means that they're able to share a lot of technology and brilliant minds across different vehicles. It's up to you what to make of that. But I do think that they're a pretty good way to go in general. And we go look at Toyota. Now, I like the 4Runner a lot. There's just something kind of interesting and cute, but also kind of rugged at the same time about these. Uh, in general, I feel like Toyota is a little over the top sometimes for some reason. I don't know why, but I think these are kind of an interesting balance for that. I think it works well on an SUV like this. And, I like those kind of details and the depth that they put into the grille on the new ones. However, I will say, Toyota generally does not have the best interiors, and I'm not sure why. So Toyota, Subaru, same company, kind of similar sort of quality on the interiors. A little bit plasticky, but if you find something like this aftermarket, or not aftermarket, you find something like this used, you might enjoy it. I think it's cool. Same goes for the GR Corolla. So this is their new hot hatch. Uh, what I like about this is, it is a little bit over the top, which you might expect for a hot hatch. However, the interior is really just enough, which I like. You look at it and you're sitting in it, and it just kind of gets the job done. Whereas you sit in, for instance, like a Type R or some of this other stuff, it's a little bit too much for me. It kind of starts feeling a little bit like you're in a Need for Speed arcade game. Whereas this, to me, is just very plain and at the same time fun and zippy and cool to be in. So if you're looking for a hot hatch, I do like this GR Corolla. Uh, Other than that, something you're going to notice, like I said, when you go look at these things on the used market, you go look at Toyota or Honda on the used market, Subaru as well, they really hold their value well because it's the first thing people think of when they want to go buy a car that they think of as reliable used. Always bear that in mind. Really, how good of a deal is this thing? Because at the end of the day, uh, you go look at JD Power brand reliability, and it's like kind of the wild thing about cars these days is they're all reliable. And I think that's excellent because we all want our cars to last as long as possible, except for Land Rover, I guess. But you see, you go look at this thing, and all cars are reliable. And realistically, you start looking after a few years how these cars depreciate. Some of these depreciate more than others, and some of them are more of a good deal than others in the grand scheme of things. So definitely bear that in mind. And these days everybody is thinking of Kia and Hyundai as a pretty standout pick, and I can see why. Although do consider this. Bear in mind that most cars are pretty reliable these days. And JD Power, what does this mean? Some people say, oh, you hit your knuckles on the wrong part too many times when you go reach for it, and JD Power calls that a dependability issue. I don't know if that's true or not, but definitely bear that in mind, that reliability is a very different game now than you may have thought of it as 15, 20 years ago. So Tesla, These are obviously very awesome, very fast, very fun vehicles. Um, I love this kind of grille detail. Not quite a grill, but this kind of sharp lip is kind of interesting. Model wise, not quite for me. But everybody has one. So, you know, that might change how you feel about it. For me, I feel like once the Model 3 is $25,000 used, then it will be an exciting car for me. But for now, it's, I don't know, it's just not unique enough for me. It just feels like everybody has one, which is a shame because they're very fast and very cool. The interiors are not quite there yet, but I understand it. I mean, it's a new company. Like, you really think about how brand new Tesla is in the grand scheme of things and all of the different stuff they've had to work out to get these things moving. And really is just incredible. So hopefully we see in the coming years that interior quality continues to improve. It is very interesting. I mean, it's very light and airy, which I feel like we saw in like the BMW i3 and even on that Chevy Bolt we were looking at. Like everybody's coming up with these cool, airy interiors that are almost suggestive of, when the steering wheel's not even going to be there anymore, which is cool. Um, I guess it's cool. Different people are going to want to continue driving their cars, but these are super fun, super fast, and if you upgrade it for $5,000 or whatever, this thing drives itself and stops you at every place you need to get gas or to get electricity. And I hope we continue to see all of the gas station companies build out electric capabilities because I've heard that it's difficult to wait in line to get these things charged. I mean, you go to a supercharger and maybe there's a bunch of other people there, and that kind of slows your trip down. But other than that, pretty cool vehicle. Super fast. Now, BMW, I don't know what the hell's going on these days. Um, to me, like, these are just all over the place. And this has kind of been a continual theme that we've seen with BMW that kind of started with um, their infotainment systems. I always found that they were kind of unintuitive to use, and it's kind of branched out into their overall design where there's something about it that's just very not relatable. Like in the kind of in a similar sense to what you're seeing with Kias and Hyundai, which Hyundai I guess is a very reliable up and coming pick. Same with Kia, but I don't know who these are designed to appeal to. I don't know what character you're going for here. I mean, I'm just thinking to myself, I'm gonna go spend $100,000 on a sports saloon and get this. It's like, what is this? Like, what the fuck's going on here? But they're experimenting. But realistically, when you're hearing something like that from somebody who's really a BMW enthusiast, I love the E30, and it's just gone to this point where it's just so unrelatable. I don't know what that means. Like, they really need to kind of rethink this thing. Um, yeah, I guess the 3 Series still looks kind of okay. But you're seeing more and more they're dropping manual transmissions, which is kind of a trend across the industry. I get it. DCT, dual clutch automatics are technically faster. Although I suspect a lot of the people that are going to be continuing to buy these are people that are still excited about there being a steering wheel in their car, which means they may also be excited about still having a manual transmission. You've seen a lot of folks doing this widescreen thing, which I think is awesome. I think Mercedes started that with the S Class maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and we're seeing it branching out. And I think that's a cool feature, so long as these are responsive, intuitive systems, and maybe keep some of the dials around for volume air conditioning and stuff because that makes it easier to use. I do like BMW's leather. Is always very tight, similar to Mercedes. Um, but yeah, the designs just for me aren't quite there right now. Even with this one, which is a more conservative 3 Series, it's just like I don't know what this is. This chin and the grills are always just enormous. But they're experimenting with things, right? And as everybody's moving towards electric, they're getting very creative, trying to decide what cars are supposed to look like now. So we'll see. It's just to me, this is just like you go look at nondescript alien toys for 8-year-old boys, and this is what you get. um, so now Lexus is something interesting because these are very quality, luxurious vehicles in a way under the Toyota brand. But I feel like when you start looking at Lexus or Acura or Cadillac, you say to yourself, what is luxury, right? And these to me get more in the neighborhood of brand badge engineered luxury, which badge engineering means, for instance, an American company sells a car platform to a British company, and then they put a different badge on it, kind of change how it works a little bit, and they call it a completely different car. Well, this is kind of badge engineered luxury, I feel like. And that's always the sense that I've gotten with Lexus, with Cadillac, is you're really paying a lot of money for a Toyota. And in general, I'm not too impressed with Toyota interior. And you go look at these things, and I kind of feel the same way sometimes. Although I suspect it's a matter of preference. But the same thing with the exteriors, right? Like all of these, I don't know who these are designed to be relatable to. Like they just look weird to me. But maybe I'm just kind of out of touch with how everything's supposed to look like, alien whatever. Although, as I understand it, some of these Lexus performance vehicles are very, very cool, but also very expensive compared to a Corvette. But that's Lexus, right? So now Hyundai and Kia are the standout picks these days for liability, value, which is cool. I do like the way the IONIQ looks, and this is another, it's kind of similar to what Ford's up to, is they're really able to come up with a very characteristic vehicle and take what would otherwise be just a $30,000 four banger or electric or whatever and really, get $40,000 to $50,000 out of it because of how much character it has. And I think that's cool. Like this, you're seeing features incorporated from GTI, from maybe even Dodge, like American Muscle, which I think is cool. And these are fun. Steering wheel, not quite my style, but other than that, I think that there's a lot of people who this thing relates to, and there's something that's pretty fun about it. And I know there's a lot of cool details to it, like these tail lights, the rims, bumper details, all these sharp folds along the side of it. Like that stands out to me, and I like that. Key looks kind of weird to me, um, but it's reliable and it's a good deal. I don't like the steering wheels they put on these things. Although maybe again that's a generational thing where that just looks like an old, uh, 1970s boat interior. But other than that, definitely very cool, interesting, sleek lines. Some of the shiny plastics, whatever, but you see that in Honda too. I don't know why they do that. Just unusual looking vehicles. All of them are like this, although they're a good deal. And they tend to last long. See a lot of these Tellurides on the road these days. Audi kind of runs up against that line. They brush up against the neighborhood of being a little unusual looking. Kind of has an electric shaver look to the front of it. But I feel like they're a little bit more particular about how they do it. And Audi does give you a little bit of that feeling that you're driving an expensive Volkswagen sometimes, kind of that badge engineered feel. However, they're definitely quality interiors. Volkswagen is quality interiors, Audi, Porsche, all great. The A4 to me is kind of like that right balance of conservative, whereas some of these are a little bit out there. I feel like the A5 always had kind of a cool profile to it. And these are, I believe, or they were two of the only ones that still were available with a manual transmission in the US. Although, maybe that's changing as quickly as I'm talking about it. A7, very cool saloon. I love the profile of this thing. And it's a very interesting, spacious vehicle. A little expensive. TT is pretty cool if you want something fun, kind of a Z car style. R8. I start thinking to myself, man, maybe I should have got a Corvette for that kind of money. But that's just kind of the feeling you always get when you start looking at these sorts of options. Is uh, Really there's great vehicles out there for the money that aren't the immediate obvious picks sometimes. And I think a great example of that is going to be like the Cadillac. It was the ATS, and now it is the CT4. And this is a great example of really they went ahead and took something that really could have been like an M3, and that's what this is like. A lot of people really appreciate this vehicle for being an excellent performance sedan that kind of is a great option for maybe you were thinking about a Corvette because it's such an excellent deal for a performance vehicle, but you wanted something that is a little bit better for your family or whatever. And I think this is a great pick for that reason. So this is really going to get you out the door in the neighborhood of $60,000 for a excellent 0 to 60 3.9 seconds. I mean, comparable to an M3, right? And that's what I start thinking to myself is you look at these other vehicles and a lot of the times if you're really value conscious, you're going to be better off getting a Corvette or a CT4 or something like this. And, the interiors are getting better in Cadillac. I always had a problem with leather, really crappy, flaky, cushy leather. I feel like they're catching on and they're getting to the point where you sit in a Cadillac and you really have a BMW level experience for a performance sedan. And I think that's excellent. So, really do be considering these sorts of vehicles. And I think in the coming years, there's going to be a lot of people that are really, really blown away by what we're seeing coming out of domestic American vehicles. And I think that's awesome.